All right, all you freedom-loving boys and girls, welcome to episode 4. May the 4th be with you of episode 4 of Mission Critical Podcast. And it is May the 4th that we're shooting this video. As a matter of fact, it's exactly 1600 on May the 4th. So there's a 6 in there for, order number 66. For those of you who are Star Wars geeks, that will be a future podcast. By the way. All right. Hey, so tonight's episode, and I'm kind of rushing the intro a little bit just to save some time because we have a special guest tonight. Mm-hmm. But the content or the focal point, the subject of tonight's podcast is going to be the VA, the Veterans Administration, specifically the Veterans Administration as it pertains to healthcare for veterans. Jeremy's going to end up kicking this off. So on that note, we are your hosts. I'm Mark, and this is
Redbeard,
aka Acceptable
Christian
Dirty Civilian, ACDC. And then our special guest for tonight. So if you've seen any of the previous podcasts or Russ, anyway, I'm just trying to say Russ was a guest over on Centerline Systems. What was that, Russ? A couple months ago? How long ago was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
So Russ was a guest on one of the podcasts we did over on Centerline Systems. Obviously, we're moving everything over to Mission Critical Podcast. And without further ado, I'm going to let Russ introduce himself, share what he wants to share with you guys. And we're going to jump right into it because we're going to try to keep this. We already know it's going to be over an hour. I mean, there's just no way we can talk about the subject for any less, but we are going to try to keep it into that hour and a half range. And more importantly, Russ is a real human being, is a good man, and he's got a family obligation that he's got to attend to. So, matter of fact, before you introduce yourself, Russ, from Jeremy and myself, and just want to say thanks for taking the time out of your busy life to join us.
Sir.
Here's to you, sir.
Thanks.
All right. On that note, Russ, why don't you share with people what you want to share?
Just background, I guess. Pretty normal labor for most of my life. I was in the Marine Corps for something like 6.5 years. I was medically retired and have kind of had a lot of life transition since then. Some college education, although I didn't graduate, and it turns out it's not all that necessary anyway. So,
my God, you're less than human.
No, I won't go into. We'll go into the details another time. But I got a couple of certificates and just called it quits. It was fun while that lasted. But otherwise, nobody special. Just managed to charm my way into this here podcast.
And charm your way you have done, sir.
Yes.
Charm indeed.
Thank you.
There's to the charm. All right. So again, the title or the subject for tonight's video, is we're going to talk about the VA. And you've seen the previous videos. You already know that I was in the military too, and blah, 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 blah. So I think what I really am what I'm hesitating before I turn it over to Jeremy, because I just realized, there's no way. I mean, maybe we could do this as some kind of podcast where there was 60 other veterans on the podcast and live stream or whatever. But if you're a veteran, or if you know somebody who is a veteran and you watch this video, you have to leave comments, right? Tell us if we're the rarities. Tell us, because you can already see that this isn't going to be a pleasant conversation. There's probably not going to be very nice things about the VA being spoken here, right? And that's based on, I know it's anecdotal, but it's still objective from my perspective. This happened. That is objective fact. This is what's going on. That's objective fact. But it's coming from two knuckleheads. So you could say, well, it's anecdotal, subjective, in nature. So if you're a veteran or somebody in your family was a veteran, and if you've got a story to share, pass this video along, share it with everybody, leave a comment down below. All right. And on that note, we're going to jump into the meat of the issue, so to speak. And Redbeard, aka Acceptable Christian Dirty Civilian, ACDC, that's his new nickname going forward. ACDC is gonna pretty much run this podcast, and because I'm kind of more of a guest here myself. So Jeremy, I'm about to bring you full screen.
Sweet.
You take us where you want to take us, sir.
Yep. All right. So basically, obviously, I think as kind of Mark has stated, I am the kind of the person from the outside looking in, but I do see several inherent things when it comes to the VA. I've known people even besides Mark and Russ, that have had to deal with the VA to varying degrees and to different extenuating circumstances and stuff like that. So I've been around enough people to kind of get some insight for myself. But the biggest thing, like, in the point that I'm going to try in direct, at least through this, and Mark and Russ will be able to not only speak on their own experiences, but also have a nice carryover to this, is, you know, the VA is, for all intents and purposes, a state-run medical system. It is a medical apparatus that is designed and, basically cared for by the state. And my biggest thing, from the outside looking in, is, my point of the conversation is there's a number of people that really, really advocate for state-run medical. And my biggest questions lie within the idea, like, if we see like how the treatment of veterans has been through the VA, like, is that something that realistically is something that we can take and expound upon that into the general populace? Because you have to remember that even though that, like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of military members, there's because it's not just, veterans, it's active and all of that. There's a lot of different things to consider here, right? There's what Mark, you might be able to know the number on this, or Russ. What is the active number for the military right now? I know it's over 1 million. I just don't remember exactly how much it is.
Well, as Russ kind of is looking up at, Odin, his god in the sky, I'll just simply say this. I mean, I don't know how to enumerate that because it does vary year to year, all that kind of stuff. But the general rule of thumb that I always apply when it comes to the military is 1% of the population. It's only 1% of the population ever even serves in the military, whatever the branch is. So what are we, 360 million people in the military? 360 is the approximation for our population. So, what does that boil down to? Is that 3.6 million? I don't think think we're a standing military of 3.6 million. I'd have to. Matter of fact, reserves and stuff, right? Well, I'll bring it over to you guys, and I'll actually just go and I'll use a search engine to kind of find out what the standing number is. But it's incredibly small. So again, there's on average 1% of our population has ever served. So that just means has served. Like, Russ and I aren't in the military anymore, but we would fit into that 1% right now. So how many people are actually doing it right now? I would have to assume it's probably, of the, let's just call it 4 million, just for monkey math. I couldn't see it. I can't see us being over 1 million people strong total on active duty right now. Right.
So, go ahead, Russ, if you had something.
No, just agreeing.
So like, the biggest point that I'm trying to make here is, like, look, you have a state-run system. Given the numbers, you have a state-run system that, at least from what I've gathered, speaking to several veterans, and from what I've gathered, in the conversations myself, Mark, and Russ have had, and the biggest thing is, again, you have people that want a state-run system, but if they can't realistically or feasibly even begin to deal with the, say the 1 million or like the 1.1 or 1.2 million or whatever the estimated number is.
If you want that number, I have it for you right now.
Yeah. What is it?
Okay. So this is information as of 2022, February of 2022. As of February of 2022, and this is from a site called governing.com. I don't know how, I've never heard of this site before, so take it for what it's worth. But according to them, there was let's just call it 1.2 million active duty, and just under 800,000 reserves. According to, and they're citing it according to Department of Defense data that was taken in September of 2021. So this article is February of 2022. This news source took their data from the Department of Defense, the numbers that the Department of Defense released in September of 2021.
Okay. So given those numbers, like, if we have a system, like the VA that has such a difficult time addressing it, not only the issues inherent within its own apparatus, but also in properly in effectively dealing with the issues that veterans face, active or retired. It leaves a lot to be desired given those metrics. That why would we even want it? For a general apparatus for everybody else, And granted, I'm not going to delve too much into it, but there is also a constitutional argument there. But I want to leave it specifically to the VA at this juncture. But that's something moving forward that hopefully Mark and Russ will be able to kind of speak to. So from here on out, whoever wants to take it, Mark, Russ, whichever one you want.
Can you just go back a quick second? So I mean. You're looking at the numbers, and if I understood you correctly, and I apologize, I was a little distracted. I had to pull up that data, but you're basically saying, hey, there's 1 million. So technically, there's more, right? No, but that's people in uniform at that time. So the number is larger, right? There's more Russes, me and Russes, than there are actually wearing the uniform, right?
Correct. Yep.
And so I think I just want to, the reason I'm asking you this, Jeremy, is because the difference there is because when you're on active duty, your healthcare is from the TMC, the Troop Medical Center. It's from the base. It's all right there, compartmentalized. It's when you leave that active duty and you become, the Mark and Russ show. That's where and I'm just throwing this out there because I want to understand what you're saying, but I also want to be very specific. My argument isn't going to be necessarily what it was like when I was in the military. It's what I was like now that I'm out of the military. That's the distinction, because my healthcare when I was in the military was provided to me directly from that military unit, whether the division level, the Department of Defense. Now that I'm an ACDC like you, that's where the breakdown is from my perspective. Russ, I don't want to speak for you, but you want to add to that? What do you think of that comment right there? Am I kind of correct in that?
Yeah, you're spot on. And even if we go back to that guesstimation of 3 million people, using that as the number for us no longer putting the uniform on every day, the point still stands. I mean, it's not as big of a gap, but the point still stands. It's not yes, 3 whatever million is a lot of people, but comparatively to the rest of the country and the rest of the country's infrastructure, it's not a lot of people, and especially with the budget that they actually have. The math still checks out. So I think your point still stands.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting point, because again, you have a lot of people that advocate for that type of system, but then it's just like, okay, well, it barely, it seems to barely run for a lot of the feedback I've gotten. And then when it does, you do have the oddities to where people are just like, no, I had a fantastic experience, which, more power to them, like they should, right? Like you should have the best experience possible. So that way it's not an absolute, nightmare when you're going there. But the common thing that I've found is more veterans have had more difficulties either securing the proper level of care or disability or whatever that they need, or just getting care to begin with. I've known like 2 veterans that literally for the life of them couldn't even get a phone call through just to try and set something up. So it's like, this is like, and that's what people don't understand, right? It's like, you want this single, like, I believe it's a single payer state-run medical thing. It's like, okay, but it's barely working for only a couple million people, and you think that your phone call is going to matter more than the next person, to where I just got to jump in. I just got to jump in because I don't want you to go too far afield from the statement phone call. So this is my experience. All right. And then maybe, as you point out, maybe there's a veteran out there who has the exact opposite experience. Well, I'm here to tell you, this isn't the experience from all the veterans in, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, because I have to go through the same facility that all the rest of them go through. And here's what it is. There is no such thing as a phone call, Jeremy. There is no. Now, so when I'm able to see a civilian doctor and I go in and I meet with the civilian doctor,
and I have like, whether it's x-rays or, you know, whatever and unfortunately, and maybe I will share a little bit of like what's actually wrong with me. I think I'm going to have no choice but to admit to some things here tonight, which, you know, are kind of personal, but I think I'm lucky enough that I actually get civilian doctors, because the main VA facility is down in Minneapolis, St. Paul. If anyone's not familiar with Minnesota, that's like 2.5 hours away, right? So I'm able to at least go. I still have to go to the local VA facility, but I'm able to see doctors in my local community, right, for the majority of my healthcare. Now it's funny because I actually have to go to the VA in Superior, Wisconsin next week for a follow-up visit. You know, we'll get to that, but to Jeremy's point, and I digress, you can't call. There is no calling in.
No.
I can do that on the civilian side. I just did it yesterday, right? You know, for some other, you know, issue, maybe it'll come up, but I can call the civilian hospital and actually talk to somebody, an RN or the doctor for the department that's dealing with me. I cannot do that with the VA. I can get to the main switchboard down in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they'll maybe take a message, and maybe, you know, dude. So all I'm trying to say before you get too far afield, this is one of my main complaints. You know, if the title of this is going to be, so you want government controlled healthcare, right? Well, I'll swap you healthcare right now, because it is so difficult to get somebody in the VA. That's one of the first things. And I personally believe it's by design. They don't want to talk to you. You know, it's all about, well, you could have sent me an email. I could send you an email. Like I have and I see Russ is already, I just didn't want you to get too far afield from the whole issue of a phone call. There is no such thing in my experience in the VA as I'll just call you. Although on the civilian side, I can do it every single freaking time with the civilian hospital that I deal with. Russ, do you want to add to that before Jeremy takes us farther?
Yeah, and you know, to kind of bounce off your point there, Mark, is you know, I feel pretty confident that there's a good number of people in the VA, and by no means am I saying any ill about the VA staff at large, because a lot of them are just normal people too. They just got a job. Maybe they got out and got a job there. You know, there's a lot of staff that I've met that are nice folks. There's a lot that aren't, though. And that's something that comes along with government employment is when you work for the government, your paycheck is secure. You don't have to go the extra mile. You don't have to do any of that stuff there's no impetus on customer service. So yeah, I mean,
before you go, I don't want to, boys and girls, just like all of our other podcasts, this isn't scripted. I have no idea what Russ is going to say. He has no idea what I'm going to say, or Jeremy, vice versa. The only coordination here was that Jeremy was going to do the intro because he's the one, you know, who posed the question, like, so you want government run healthcare, right? And then Russ and I are the two knuckleheads who have government run healthcare, right? And you know, let's hear our stories. But to the point Russ just made there, Russ, I'm not picking on you, but I think you're being overly polite, honestly. I have had, I'm at my wit's end. I'm on my 4th VA doctor, and you know, you don't get to talk to the doctor, you talk to their staff. So to the point of like, well, I don't want to condemn the system. I'll condemn the system because I'm actually calling people out. That's where I am in my experience with the VA now. I'll be in front of an RN or a doctor, and I just hear the same thing. And I just look, I'm like, well, you're part of the system. Why don't you fix it? Why don't you say something? If you're telling me that you know it's wrong, what I'm now getting is like, well, if you don't like it, you can just go get civilian healthcare. I'm like, so no, I'm not trying to take away. You're right. I would have said it differently. I'm sure there are some good people within that system, but those people are so, and in all fairness, in my 5 years now of dealing with the VA, there's only 2 people who I can, to Russ's point, I will call out by name and say those people are the only 2 people in the VA who I personally feel give a shit, who took the time out of their day to actually call me. Like they called me. You know, like that has not been, the majority of my experience has not been what Russ just said. Most of the people I've dealt with actually don't give a shit. They are punching in their time clock. They're doing they know they're not going to get fired. And I'm sure this will come out in the podcast. I've had VA employees straight up lie, file. No, it is a system, in my opinion, in which people are milking it, making good money, and they lock the shields around each other to protect, because otherwise, you know, you pull back the curtain and the emperor has no clothes, and you expose them for what they are. So I apologize, Russ. I wasn't trying to steal your thunder, but I kind of, in my opinion, and I go back to the declaration of intent videos. This is one of the things, like, no, I'm done with this. This is incredibly messed up. So to Jeremy's point, boys and girls, how do you think that's going to look with a bunch of other government bureaucrats who are now in charge of your healthcare? You think you're going to get anywhere? Like, no, they're never going to, like, you know, oh, you know, Susie screwed up and we're going to hold Susie accountable. I actually tried to file a complaint against somebody, and I called it's a veterans health, you know, there's a special, like, line that you can call and file a complaint and register a complaint. And they wouldn't even provide me the information of the individual who I was filing the complaint against. So even at that level, they were, you know, they were circling the wagons, you know, locking shields and protecting themselves. I couldn't even, going through that channel, I couldn't even file a complaint. They wouldn't tell me the name of the employee who verbally assaulted me, verbally, it's a strong word, but like, who blamed me over the phone, like yelled at me. And then once that person realized their mistake, hung up the phone on me, and then immediately went into the system, typed up, well, he's belligerent and he's a hard, you know, like, well, that maybe that's true, but that doesn't excuse the fact that you misrepresented, you lied, you denied me healthcare based off of an assumption. And once you realize that your mistake, your solution was to hang up the phone and then file a complaint against me, as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm sorry, sir, I fucked up. Those numbers are really similar. It doesn't excuse it, but I see the mistake I made, and you are 100% correct. And this is the healthcare that you're supposed to be given, not the one I was demanding you subject yourself to.
Right.
See what I'm kind of getting at? See, I probably shouldn't even drink during this video. I'm already getting freaking livid right now. Well, I'm going to bring it over to one of you guys full screen. I got to get off screen. I got to get my complexion back. I'm already turning too red.
So to kind of go off your point here quick, and I really kind of want both of you guys to speak to this. You know, you brought up bureaucrats and bureaucracy, and so this plays very much again into the state apparatus, right? Like, bureaucracy, there's never been a level of bureaucracy that's ever realistically made something better. Like, bureaucracy and red tape bureaucracy has always it's always stifled proper operation, if you will. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be some, like, refinements here and there, but we're not talking about refinements. We're literally, you know, like in Mark's case, right? Like, you're literally talking about people that know that they can get away with impunity. They have this system that protects them. And you look at this type of thing, and on top of that, right? Like, it's almost, this is going to be dirty to say, but it's almost like our court system, where you have to prove your case instead of this aura of, like, you know, like, hey, you know, like, it's this guilty until proven innocent type thing, right? Like, if you come in literally with your leg gone, they're like, well, you know, is your leg really gone though? You know, like, and granted, it might not be that extreme, but the point being is, like, you have bureaucrats that literally, they're like, hey, like, just because I can't see your leg doesn't mean that it's not there. Or hey, Mark, I really don't like the fact that you are who you are, so why should I have to help you in any way? Like, so, you know, that being said, like, again, in this general apparatus, like, if you take that same measure and you apply it to general society, like, again, the fact that you can't even, you know, at least in your case, and I'm sure probably in Russ's case too, obviously, but, like, dude, there's no real lines of communication. Like, what if you can't make it to the hospital that day? You have nobody that you can talk to. And then moreover, if you do, if and when you ever get somebody that you're able to talk to via, like, an email even, and you're like, hey, look, like, dude, I'm all fucked up, you know, and they're like, well, you have to prove that you're fucked up. Like, so if you guys want to speak on that, and like the bureaucratic realm of that, and like just the bullshit that's there, like, I'd love to hear that too, because I think that's super important.
Hey,
yeah,
Rod,
Mark, can I take this?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of us needs to jump on this and just and drive the ship, so to speak. So yeah, go ahead, Russ. I'm going to bring you full screen, sir.
Okay. So first off, let's just kind of get like a overview of bureaucracy, right?
Yep.
Like bureaucracy was created to stem the flood of the masses needs
Mhm.
to the head of whatever the direction of their needs are flowing, right? So if we have a lot of need for something,
Mhm.
and the top of that giver of need is incapable of taking everybody's issues, we establish a bureaucracy to kind of filter it, if you will. But
Yep.
we as humans, we know how to exploit stuff like that. And like I
Yep.
said before, the problem with a lot of government jobs, and I know because I've had a few, is your paycheck's already in the bank. So you really don't have to try too hard. So if you're a bureaucrat, or you're in some part of the bureaucratic system, there's really nothing holding your feet to the fire to get your job actually done. Like I think the post office is probably one example where they do get some heat if they're taking too long, or what have you. But even then, missing packages come up all the time, and just all kinds of shenanigans. So even with something that has a time limit like that, they still don't have any pressure to really try their hardest.
Mhm.
And with the VA, the way that their system is set up whether it's you're just a paper pusher, or you're actually dealing with a patient, the impetus is not actually on the care. It's on, are you spending our money to give care? You don't need to prove that you actually gave it to somebody, but like, are you capable of running some labs or something like that? And
The
that's all they
process.
care about.
Mhm.
The process. It's
Their
more about the
metric for
process, not the result.
Yeah.
yeah, their metric for success is not healthy patients. It's did you spend the budget that we gave you?
Yep.
Right.
And did it affect the result that we wanted? And that's bureaucracy for you.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
light
Your
just
phone
went
just there's the NSA messing with your. Hey, but I wonder. I want to bring this back to you, Russ. But the one thing I want to say, as you were talking about that, this is going to be hard to explain unless you have been in a government entity. What Russ was just describing, in my opinion, well, actually, that's not true. I take back what I was saying. I mean, like, I think if you're a student of history, if you look at other cultures, look at history, what Russ just said should strike. You should right now be like, eyebrows looking up, like, wow, that sounds really familiar. It sounds like, let me think. What does that sound like? Oh, that's right. It sounds like socialism. It sounds like communism.
exactly.
Like,
Mhm.
Exactly.
and all of the inherent pitfalls and issues, correction, all the pitfalls and issues inherent with those systems. That's what we're seeing, and that's what I'm personally experiencing, and that is my personal opinion.
Mhm.
When it comes to the VA. Now, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, and I want to bring this back to Russ, but I just want to throw a personal note here, because I honestly could do this podcast by myself for 10 hours. You would be bored. Well, some of you might not be bored, because my beard is getting, even better. It's getting, looking more sexy. But no, but like, so I happen to know somebody who works in my local VA office, and I knew him long before I had to go to the VA for my health care. And if it wasn't for that personal connection, so think about this, boys and girls. This is the problem. To Russ's point, how bureaucracies work, and what and everything that entails. It was the same thing in the military. It was the same thing in the CA. It's who you know, who you're friends with, and all that kind of shit. So my question to you isn't like, okay, I'm lucky and I know one person, and that's the only lifeline I have into a completely decrepit, broken, corrupt system. But I at least have that one lifeline, and I can't pull on that thread. That doesn't get me anything different or special. I guess the only thing special it gets me is an actual phone call, because otherwise no one's ever going to fucking call you, right? So I guess maybe if that makes me, unique or something, then maybe it does. But that is what we get out of those type of systems. If you happen to have a cousin or an uncle or married into a family where, somebody in the family is part of the party, is a party member, well, then maybe you can actually get an extra, a dozen eggs as opposed to 6 eggs this week or something of that nature. And I think, Russ, I just wanted to throw that out there because that's what I feel. Feelings are such a weird thing. So maybe I want to try to come up with a different word. But whenever I try to take a step back and I look at it as, as honestly as I possibly can, I just keep coming back to this is where we are. We are in this. These people, these bureaucrats, they're untouchable. And they hold the purse strings, as you were kind of, it doesn't matter that I didn't help Russ or Mark. It mattered that I can have on my form 65. I talked to them 10 times or what, and therefore the money's being spent and give us more in our budget for next year. So again, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but like that is something that you were saying that really resonates with me because that is one of the main issues or the main complaints I have about the VA. And I think to Jeremy's point, he just stepped off camera, but to Jeremy's point, if you want government run healthcare, you're going to have this times 100. Like we're only seeing it in our little soda straw world as being veterans. Imagine what this would look like. Because this would be exponentially worse if this was what the whole country worked on. All right, Russ, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, the way your comparison there is it's exactly what I was alluding to because I my high school girlfriend, she was from Poland, and I talked to her parents a lot about life in Poland when they were still behind the curtain, and they would have to queue up for their ration of toilet paper. I mean, you think that the toilet paper shortage from Corona was bad
from the Rona.
Yeah, you might get your one roll of toilet paper for that week or whatever it is, and if for some reason the powers that be didn't send enough and not everybody gets their roll of toilet paper, and that's exactly how it is too.
We had 60,000 rolls. We had to distribute them, and we did it. So it doesn't matter if 30,000 of them went to the 5 people at the upper levels of management. That doesn't matter. We distributed 60,000 rolls of toilet paper.
As long as the math checks out for the government bureaucrats, they don't really care where it ends up. I mean, not to bring this up, but Ukraine's a fantastic example.
No, it's a great point. I mean, honestly, we're sitting here talking about the VA, but the correlation between, and it's funny, Jeremy, God dang it, you must it's almost like you're like some science fiction brain sucker on my head because I actually thought about this today when I was doing my day-to-day grind before this podcast. Because how much money have we spent in Ukraine? I looked at the camera. What is the number right now, boys?
Last I saw it was over 100 billion is one of the projections I saw.
Without going down the rabbit hole of whether we should or should not spend that money in Ukraine, I already know where I stand on it, and see our previous podcasts if you haven't. I mean, I think it should be crystal clear. But to the point, Russ and I know I definitely want to make. I can't speak for Russ. I'm assuming Russ would agree with him on saying. So I'll just make the statement and let Russ give his comments. If let's just say that's $100 billion, monkey math. Russ, I don't know about you, but that $100 billion, if it came back into the VA and if it was managed properly and distributed and utilized properly, I know I'm 5 years into a health issue that the VA just still doesn't give a shit about, and I guess to their credit, if you want to call it that, I haven't died yet. And that's all they it hasn't killed you. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't address the pain I'm in every day, both physically and mentally, right? Because I know both of you will attest to this. Dude, I'm in some type of physical pain that no one is willing to, and no one cares to try to identify. And that adds the mental strain of, you don't know what's happening to you. Right. I mean, here, I guess I'll just say it. And for the record, I'm not even a half a drink deep. So this isn't alcohol speaking. This is just me suddenly being an incredibly honest person. It really fucks with you. It fucks with you on such a level. If you don't know if like what you are experiencing is the thing that's about to kill you, and if you have that like every day, every other day, and I know my situation pales in comparison to other individuals, other veterans who are going through the same type of situation, right? Just not getting the healthcare, not knowing what's going on. And my final comment on this before I turn it back over to these guys, and that is the one thing that really breaks my heart is I'm 55. I know this space. I was in the agency. I was in the military. I'm not an idiot. Not that you're an idiot if you don't know this, but look, there's a lot of stuff about this I don't know, right? Because I don't care about it. But I can still navigate through this information stream. What about our brothers and sisters who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s? You know what I'm saying? I can only imagine what they're experiencing and what their lives are like, and it breaks my fucking heart. So on that note, I'm going to bring it back to you guys. Who wants to go and add to that or run with it as you see fit?
I can add something to that. And from two different directions, right? So I know a lot of people who are in their autumn to winter years who rely on the VA for healthcare because the other bureaucracies being Social Security or it's all mashed up, and they didn't get any kind of healthcare, like privatized healthcare on from like a past job or something like that. And it's awful. I mean, I wish I had the details ready for you. But there was a couple of cases in the last 3 or 4 years, I reckon, that folks died waiting for care. There was one guy I remember died in the waiting room.
Like I remember that.
Yeah, and it's just awful because that person is experiencing a very sincere desperation for these people to help them, and having said that, like Mark was saying, me personally, I have a great example that illustrates exactly how this goes. Two issues that I go to the VA for regularly. One is my knee, because I have an advanced crepitus, especially in my kneeling knee, from taking a knee all the time. And
hey, before you go any further, because somebody who's not in the military might not know what that means. And they say taking the knee, and they might think of like Game of Thrones or some shit like that. No, taking a knee, that's a real thing in the military. And you were probably doing that with at least 30 to 50 at a minimum.
Oh no, I was a combat
50
engineer.
Yep.
It was like almost 80.
Yep. No, I'm saying a minimum of 30 to 50 pounds. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell people what taking a knee is before you go further. What that means.
So at any, whether you're in theater or you're in the rear, there's always some point where that you're going to be told, okay, take a knee. We need to talk about this. We're at the smoke pit, talking about conduct, or we're at a briefing or something like that, and some NCO or a staff NCO is going to call everybody over. Okay, everybody, come over here and take a knee. And that is to get you used to and comfortable with being on one knee, because in combat you take a knee all the time. You go from a standing position to on one knee, and the reason for that is because you can transition from a more stable shooting position than standing, but you can easily transition back to standing to running, or you can transition from the knee to prone. And the knee, taking a knee, being on one knee is you present a smaller target. It's just, there's 1,000 reasons why that's the most effective way to stop. When you're not moving, you take a knee. Unless you're behind cover or something like that, you take a knee. And what that does is it wears your knee out super fast.
And I want you to get back to your point, but I thought that was a great point, because you'll hear people say like, oh, whatever, suck it up, buttercup. But to Russ's point, I'm here to tell you, boys and girls, unless you've lived this, and I don't care if you were in the military for even 2 years, like it doesn't matter, 2 years, 20 years, 2 days. what Russ is talking about, that is what you're doing all the time. That is such, and it's done all the time because it's to develop muscle memory. And Russ just nailed. So if you don't understand that, okay, well then it's okay if you don't understand that, because maybe you don't understand it because you've never experienced it. But just put in your hip pocket or put into your brain housing group, like the why behind that, and then just think of like what the impact of all those repetitions will do to your body over even a 2-year period of time. Because it's not just I'm hearing my PJs doing it, and even that's going to have some impact, right? It's all these other environments and conditions. To Russ's point, I thank you for the moment you said that. I'm like, oh God, people need to know,
that was a good
because
call.
you don't know what you don't know. So like,
and
I'll circle back to this later, because this is like somebody in the VA is telling me that what's wrong with me has nothing to do with the military. I'm like, you were never in the military, were you? You know, like you're making decisions about my healthcare, and you were never in the military. Because if you're in the military, you would know what Russ just was talking about, and you'd be like, oh yeah, well, that
100%.
makes sense. My civilian doctors know it. They're like, oh yeah, this type of injury is exactly what we'd expect to see from somebody who did, you know, da 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 da. So all right, back to you, Russ. I kind of sorry.
No, that's all right. It was a good thing. Sometimes I don't think to explain some.
I'm just assuming that there's people who are going to watch this who have never been in the military. So, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, so I have advanced crepitus, especially in one knee, and I have a slew of mental health issues. None of them are you know, like the potential to lose my mind type, but I've got a few diagnoses, let's say that. So with the knee,
judging from your choice of alcohol, you definitely have some mental health issues. I'm sorry, continue, sir. I digress.
Look, at least it's not a brown bag special.
Hey, Jeremy, you shouldn't even have chimed in. He's at least drinking alcohol, Mr. Teetotaler.
Hey, it's coffee, and it's strong ass coffee.
Okay, all right.
You recovered a little bit.
Back to Russ.
So I have the on the crepitus issue and I can tell you I've gotten this my entire life with the VA. The first course of choice is straight out of the bureaucratic handbook. Oh, have they stretched and done exercises? So they hand you a sheet with all these cheaply printed out exercises, and they say, go try doing these for a while. Okay, physically fit or not, it's not going to make my knee feel better. So you have to go back after that and say, yes, I've tried these and it still didn't work. And they said, okay, so we can replace your knee. You know, we can do a knee operation. Why would I want to, you know, and they offered that to me from the day I got out in 2010. They said, we can amputate your foot and replace both of your knees. You have to go and get your knees redone. I think it's like every 10 years. So I was 20 something. Do I really want to have knee operations every 10 years? Just, you know, and the reason why it takes that drastic jump is because a surgery, it burns through that budget that they got. But doing all the steps in between, they're not too interested in that.
Right.
And then the other issue with the mental health care, you know, I was doing a job recently that was incredibly stressful, and a lot of issues that I have attributed to my having a hard time dealing with that stress. And for the first time in my life, I've never had a panic attack, but I had a panic attack, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And you know, like we said, you can't call them and say like, hey, I think I'm having a heart attack. It's not like that. So I put in for care, which was a lengthy process. All the while I'm suffering, thinking that I'm having these significant heart problems at 37. And I finally get a hold of a psychiatrist. And this psychiatrist just starts putting me on med after med after med, and no, like, okay, well, tell me about all this stuff. Well, what are you feeling? Well, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Well, it looks like you've taken this before. Let's try that again. I don't know if that's going to help. It didn't help last time. Let's just try it again. And then you come back. Hey, how are you feeling? I mean, I guess it helped a little bit. Okay, let's try this one too. And we're going to up this dosage. And so now I'm stuck on 4 different pills for depression, stress, anxiety, all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, it like just a little bit of effort and it makes me lightheaded and it feel dizzy,
Yep.
like I'm going to pass out.
Right.
How's that helping me any? And I'm
Yeah.
still stressed out on top of all of it, you know?
So not to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't want to, again, I want to emphasize
Yeah.
the point you're making. And I want to emphasize for everybody who's watching, because what Russ just said, and Russ and I have never exchanged our health issues with each other before. This is the first time I'm hearing this. And I'm here to tell you, Russ is a direct copy of what I would have said if I would have spoken this along the same lines right there.
Mhm.
My experience is I really don't care what's wrong with you. I'm going to make assumptions. I'm not going to run the tests. And this is my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I want to throw drugs on you. Now, Jeremy's heard this, offline and personal, and the people who are my friends have heard this. Like the assumptions about what's wrong with me, even though there's no medical testing, like, the last doctor who I don't want to say it fired, but I'm like, okay, I'm done working with this guy. I need another doctor. His thing is like, oh, I think it's musculoskeletal. I'm like, well, based on what? Is there a test that we've done? And he's like, I just think it is. Like, well, then how about we do a test to determine that? But to Russ's point, he wanted to put me on oxycodone. I mean, so, and then another one wanted to put me on fentanyl. And I was like, oh, time the fuck out. No way. I'll take, and I hate to say this, and this is where I guess I'm being honest about something that, and I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm going to be honest. I've consumed more alcohol in the last 4 years of my life than I did in the 40 years preceding. And it's because I'm in pain, I'm suffering, I've got these issues, and I'm not going to take fentanyl or oxycodone. And but to Russ's point, I guess I'm sadly just saying is like, it seems that the course of action is, I really don't care about you. I'm just going to prescribe meds to you. That's all it is. And if you die tomorrow, well, I guess then there's one less veteran that we have to take care of. I mean, so our budgetary dollars will go farther. But in the meantime, let me just medicate you and keep you stupid.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, if you don't mind me to elaborate on a couple of points.
I'm bringing you up, Jeremy.
But so I can kind of relate to the wear and tear aspect. Now, granted, it's not military, but anybody who's ever worked like an actual like hard labor job, like I did.
No, hey, before you go any further, I just got to chime in. My cousin is a hardworking union guy, right? And put the union side of it aside. But I'll sit and talk to him, and I'm like, dude, you are experiencing what it is like to be in and to run that type of environment where you're working 16-hour days. If you're in combat, there's really no time off, and you're out there in the environment and you're doing this incredible physical labor. So at ACDC, do not downplay it. Like you don't have to be in the military to suffer these same types of injuries or physical detriments, right?
Yeah,
that's not the right word, but you see what I'm getting.
Yeah, and I think that like to also, because we've become a society like, there's a lot of laborers, there's a lot of tradespeople, right? But we've also become a society that's very reliant on books and computers and TV and stuff like that. So I would say that there's an overwhelming amount of people that are in those particular fields as opposed to labor. So even labor in and of itself has its caveats, right? And what actually got me out of labor was, I always challenge people like, dude, like you go swing a hammer every single day and tell me that there's not going to be side effects to that. And invariably what ended up happening for me, and some people might think it's trivial, but like I got double tendonitis. I got tendonitis in both my arms at the same fucking time. And it got so bad that I couldn't lift up like a half a gallon of milk. My arms were just completely destroyed. Right. And after I got out and I had this decompression time for my body to just kind of like decompress from all of the stress, what I found is like my normal, like my resting position for how my hands are and stuff, they're stuck in the curvature of holding a hammer and swinging a hammer all day. So it's like there is really like there's consequences to the jobs that you have, right? And it freaking sucks because I'll have like those moments to where like that shit'll creep up on me, and it's like I'm not gonna go through this shit again. And it's not nearly as bad as it was, but it's one of those things that like it creeps up, and you're just like, here we go again. Like this could be either really bad, and the same thing with your shoulders and your back and stuff like that. Like swinging a hammer, dude, it freaking takes a toll on your shoulders. My shoulder pain that I get every so often, and I've had a knot like subduct underneath my shoulder for years, and it gets so bad that it's like somebody's taking a hot knife, going underneath, lifting up your shoulder blade and scraping around in there, and it's debilitating, you know. And it's like there's, you know, pretty much, and it's like unless you get some of the strongest stuff possible, which I'm adverse to taking like super strong pain meds, it's like all you really do, which to me it might be self-inflicted, but all you really do is you find a way to deal with it. And
well, so hang on, don't go too far afield. You've raised some great points, and I got to chime in here really quickly, and I'll start with the last thing and work back to other comments you've made. First and foremost, those drugs, those are masking. That all it does is it masks or it nullifies the pain on a temporary
100%.
basis, which could create other types of physical issues, mental issues for you in the long run. And so one of the things I've always said to my doctors is like, hey, I don't want to take meds. I don't want to be on oxy or fentanyl. I want to actually identify what's wrong with me, and then so we can actually take the steps necessary to fix it. But now, so that's one thing. So meds. Some meds actually can make you better, but the vast majority of meds that are being prescribed right now is just to make somebody else richer and you just to be like, yeah, what's up, man? You know, like, and you know, and well, look, as I just said, that's what alcohol does. It numbs the pain. It is a drug. But now to Jeremy's other point, and I think I didn't do a good enough job when I first said it right before you started talking, Jeremy. And then so let me just make the statement, and then you guys can chime in and take it in the direction you want to go. But you don't have to have been in the military. You can, I'm here to tell you, like, that's why Jeremy calls himself a dirty civilian. There are plenty of people in real life who have jobs that aren't military related that have the same types of physical requirements or the physical, the beating down on you physically. Like I just mentioned my cousin, 12, 16-hour days out in the elements. That's like being an infantryman, you know, he's walking, you know, like 10 miles a night, you know, like at the job site and stuff, you know, in boots and with gear. And that's like being an infantryman, right? That is going to have a toll on you over time. So if you're listening to this podcast and you think that Mark and Russ are just whining about stuff, think about that. Because I guarantee there's somebody in your life that you know who is doing a job. And to Jeremy's point, you know, they're a dirty civilian, but the physical requirements or it's not the word I'm looking for. The physical demand. Yeah, thank you, Russ. Yeah, it is the same. So don't just throw this out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in this conversation. We're talking about the corruption of the government and how bureaucrats and all this stuff can, you know, if you're going to make the argument that there should be socialized healthcare, I think what Russ and I, you know, well, here, I'm going to save that. I'm going to stop right there. Do you guys see what I'm saying? It's like, you don't have to have been in the military to know what we're talking about. And then the question then was like, well, what if you didn't, what if you had the healthcare that we have? And then I'm going to come back. Guys, remind me, because there's another point I'm just going to stop on right there, and I'm going to shut up for right now.
And to kind of just top off my whole point is like, you know, you brought up, you know, like pain meds and masking. Like, dude, the biggest thing that helped me in actually not only getting relief, but making progress in both mitigating and actually fixing issues was getting massages on a pretty regular basis. Like, that's done more for the repair of my body. But there again, you think about state-run healthcare, okay, is something that's actually going to benefit you, be a part of that healthcare, or is it going to be what the state decides is going to benefit you? Which, you know, if our general medical system as it is right now tells you anything, notwithstanding the VA, you know, are they just going to push drugs on you and be like, well, you know, even though that this type of like, you know, physical therapy or this type of massage therapy actually brings you some semblance of relief, you know, one, we're not going to cover it, but two, it's not going to be a service we're going to provide, because as much as people might hate this roundabout conversation, it is about money, like 100%. And anybody that honestly doesn't believe that the state's not overtly involved in the medical system as it is already is just blind to the whole apparatus. The VA, in my opinion, is like, it's like a much worse version of what we already have. But I feel like if within several years, if not, a decade or two, like, yeah, I could see it actually getting to that point to where you can't even call your own doctor. You can't even get the things that you actually need that's going to be substantive to your recovery. It's just going to be, you don't have an option. This is what we delegate to you, and you're going to like it, or you're just going to suffer. And so I think we're already on that warpath, so to speak. And it's like, so we really have to advocate for ourselves to have a system that realistically provides us with the care that we look for, as opposed to just being part of that dog and pony show, if you will. Because in the end of the day, like, there are no bullshit like victims of this system, both in the VA and the general medical system. And it's in those people, there's a lot of people that don't have a voice when it comes to that. So I think
damn right. Hey, well, Jeremy, I don't even want to take you too far. I don't want you to go too far afield. I have no voice. And so I want to turn this over to Russ, but I wrote a note down a second ago, and this is the thing I wanted to come back to. And I feel now it's an appropriate time to come back to that note, and then we'll turn it over to Russ. But so here's the deal. I'm no different from anybody. I'm not any more special or less, whatever, to Jeremy, to your point, right? But I do, well, because I'm also not an independently wealthy person. So the healthcare that's available to me is the VA, right? I can't afford civilian healthcare, and that, see the meme about, healthcare, from different Western nations, but which might be the thumbnail of this podcast. But to the point I want to make, and then I'm going to bring, let you guys chime in, and Russ has got to get back in here, is what you just said. So I have the VA. I'm not asking for anything special. I'm a veteran. I volunteered to do what I did. Now, I know there's a lot of not controversy, but I know there's different arguments and perspectives, like, veterans should do this. I'm like, I don't feel that way. And Russ, I can't speak for you, but when I was in the military, what was taught to me through, I was in the military when we had PLDC and BNOC. That's Primary Leadership Development Course. That was the first course before you became a sergeant. And then from a sergeant to an E6, it was Basic Non-Commissioned Officer course, BNOC, and then ANOC, and vice, and so on and so forth, right? This is in the 80s. The one thing that was really imparted upon me during my understanding of leadership that was taught to me at an early age in the military was, you never take advantage of your position, your rank, and in this case also the position of I'm a soldier, right? You never take advantage of your position for personal gain. So where I'm saying here is, people, is like, I don't want any special treatment. I've never in my life asked for a free anything because I was a veteran. If somebody offered me something like, "Oh, are you a veteran?" I'm like, well, it always throws me off. It's like, yeah, why? Like, oh, well, because you'll get 15% off. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. But I've never gone out of my way and asked for that, because it was impressed upon me. That's not what we do. I didn't join the military to get anything free or discounted from you, my fellow citizens, right? Because you already have given me something. Your money paid for me to go off and acquire these skills, and then by default, then, have these experiences and these opportunities that have made me the person I am. And yes, but the other side of that contract is that could cost me my life, loss of a limb, an eyesight. I can't even tell you how many relationships I've lost. You see where I'm going with this. I'm so lucky that I didn't die and I wasn't maimed, but now I'm 55 and my body's falling apart from 30 plus years of service. So all I'm trying, you kind of see where I'm going. This, like, no one owes me anything except one person, the government, because I had a contract with the government. That the government represents the American people. So, but you individually don't. My contract wasn't with you. Well, actually, the contract was with you, but that was a one-way street. That was me to you. I signed my name and I raised my hand on a dot. I signed my name on a dotted line. And I raised my hand saying that I'm willing to go through all this shit, to include giving up my life for you. You, though, on the other hand, you don't owe me anything except the taxes you already pay our government. It's the government that actually owes me something. So I did my part I sucked it up. I may have mentioned this in some videos before. I don't know if I have, or maybe I'm just confusing it. Maybe I've mentioned this to Jeremy. I've got at least 5 or 6 scars in my body from where either myself or my buddies like Russ.
Oh.
Uh-oh. We lost him.
Yep, we did. He was doing really well too.
He was on a roll. That was a sweet roll.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I think I could fill in some of this blank until he comes back. Did he just move?
He's frozen in time.
So yeah,
are you guys back?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, so hey, isn't that funny? Wow, that never happens until we're shooting a video.
I mean, what?
Yeah. Oh, there. So, hey, what did you guys last hear me say, or before we spun out?
You were getting right to the punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the punchline is this: my contract is with the government. Yeah. Did you guys hear that part? But
yes.
Individuals. Yeah. But I did my part. Now the government. I hate to say it this way, but the government actually owes me. I knowingly, voluntarily said, yeah, this could cost me my life. I could be maimed. I could be injured. I'm definitely going to lose some relationships, divorce, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Alcoholism, everything that goes along with it. I know that's going to happen. I voluntarily do this because the other side of the contract was, hey, Mark, when you are old and where you are right now and broken, we're going to take care of you. And I said this to Jeremy the other day, or maybe I didn't say it to you, Jeremy. I said it to somebody else. I only have 3 betrayals in my life. And I'm just going to be a little personal here, and I'm still not even done with a drink. My mother betrayed me, the agency betrayed me, and the military betrayed me. Because here I am now, and I can't get the health care that, so boys and girls, what I'm just trying to say, and I'll shut up and I'll let these guys actually make some more coherent points, because I am getting a little emotional about it. I'm broken, and it's okay. I'm never going to be the guy I used to be. I'm never going to be throwing punches. I'm never going to be doing rucks. I'm never going to be doing that stuff ever again. And it is what it is. I don't need to sleep in the mud anymore. I'm going to be glamping for the rest of my life. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But the contract was that you would take care of me if this happens. And now this has happened. And guess what? The other side of the contract is saying that has nothing to do with us. That's my personal story right there. The battle I'm fighting right now is the military saying, yeah, everything that's wrong with it. My hips are shot. My knees are shot. My back is shot. My eyesight's all fucked up. I've got tinnitus, blah, 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 blah. But they're like, yeah, that had nothing to do with this. And why? Because their claim is I didn't have a line of duty for any of this. I never said time out. I've got a little boo-boo and I got to go to the TMC, the Troop Medical Center or whatever. No, Russ was the guy who oh, yeah, you're fucked up. I'll stitch you up real quickly. Or he wraps 100-mile-an-hour tape around my fingers and says, get back in the fight, you little pussy. I mean, that's what he did, right?
Some sand
and now here we are. And now some bureaucrat is saying, well, there's no paperwork that says you were ever injured. And even though every civilian doctor says, yeah, everything that's wrong with Mark was obviously caused by the military. This is exactly the type of injuries we would expect to see from a guy who was in the infantry and then the agency. This is exactly what would happen to him. So there it is. And I apologize, everybody. I know I just got a little emotional. I can't believe I made it an hour before I exploded on that, but I'm going to stop. Russ, I'm going to turn it over to you before we turn it back to Jeremy to see if how does that resonate with you? Or and I'm serious. You might turn and say, Mark, suck it up, Buttercup. I mean, honestly, from a larger perspective, well, maybe that's what it's going to be. Maybe I will never get the healthcare and the compensation for where I am now. Whereas if you're watching this video, I guarantee, and if you're a veteran or if you know somebody who's milking it, who's got disabled tags and all this kind of shit, and they're not in the same situation, right? But they know how to manipulate the system, and yet we're sending how many billions of dollars, Jeremy, to Ukraine? $100 billion.
Yeah, it was like upwards of like 100 billion, I think.
But that money we couldn't have just said, hey, we're going to spend $100 billion on our veterans, the men and women who put them. Again, it was voluntary. I'm not asking for anything from anybody else, but I am demanding that my government actually uphold the contract that I did my part. I upheld my side of the bargain. Now you need to uphold your side of the bargain. Right. Yeah. I'm done. I kind of got a little, I apologize to everybody watching. This is a very emotional subject for me.
Yeah.
And I think I did a pretty good job of not losing my shit here so far. But I need a timeout right now. Bring it back to Russ or Jeremy, because otherwise I might.
Russ, it's all you.
All right, Russ, it's you.
You know, and that's a perfect point. You know, there was a statement made that, you know, you're going to serve, and what we're going to do is take care of you. And if that's not there, if that's not provided for, you know, like, what do I class action lawsuit? Like, that's not, you know what I mean?
If only we could. I'm serious.
If only we could, yeah.
I would do it. I would do it yesterday if we could.
Yeah. And that, like, you know, going back from Mark, what you said about, you know, it's even instilled in us. Well, I don't know about other branches, but definitely in the Marine Corps, it's instilled in us that you don't go to sick bay. Like, if you go to sick bay, you get ridiculed. You're a sick bay commando. You're a malinger. You know, you get a lot of stuff for it. So yeah, I've got a lot of ratings that are 10%, but it's just because I didn't have a lot of paperwork. And thank goodness at the end I saw through the crap, and I just ignored all that noise and started to really pursue treatment before I got out, because that's what covered me for it. And I would like to actually just take this opportunity just to get everybody's gears turning, and mental gears turning about everything we're talking about. The way the system is set up now, the way the VA is set up now, it's a bureaucratic system. Everybody's got their paychecks, they've got a budget, and the government just says burn through this budget so that we can show that we're providing care. That's it. There's no customer service or anything like that. Now on the flip
there's
side,
no phone calls.
you can't. And you know, Mark, we're gonna have to talk about it sometime too, because I also called that whistleblower line, and I got nothing back from it. That a-hole is still doing his job.
They lock shield.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to rage about that sometime, another time. But you know, like on the flip side of things,
are you sure you need to go to the soccer game tonight? Maybe we just rage right now. I'm ready to rage, dude. You can just tell I'm ready to rage right now. I'm at the appropriate. I'm ready to rage. I've had a couple sips of vodka. I'm ready to rage.
For sure. Yeah, no, this has been going for me for a long time. Yeah. But, you know, being medically retired, 90% medically retired. And that's another thing too, because I could be 100%, but I was lied to. And anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So I'm also 90% medically retired, which is, you know, in essence, the same as you know, if I did my 20, right? Like I've got a retirement deal with Obama's signature on it and everything, right? So I get TRICARE. Now, TRICARE is what in my brain is the government providing healthcare a little bit better. It's not perfect, but better than the VA. And what they do is they assign, based on region of the U.S. where you live, they assign your healthcare to a health insurance. And any cost that you have for your treatment is billed through that health insurance, and the money comes from the government. Why can't we do that instead of having the VA? And don't get me wrong, there are some things that the VA does that is a good thing. The GI Bill, post 9/11 GI Bill, I'm here to tell you, rocks. It is awesome. You know, the cemeteries, the VA is responsible for cemeteries. That's great. You know, we need people that are going to take care of the grounds of where our heroes are resting. But when it comes to the healthcare, why is the government trying to provide the healthcare? Leave it to professionals who want to do that job, who are hungry for that paycheck, and they do their job to earn their paycheck. My healthcare through TRICARE is provided by Humana because I'm in the South region. I have no problem calling Humana. I have no problem finding a doctor. TRICARE Select, I don't even need a referral anymore. The way they have it now for retirees is if I need a specialist, I don't have to go to a doctor and get a specialist. With the VA, you got to go through months of trying to get a hold of your primary care, and then you have to go get seen 1,000 times because they keep telling you all this other stuff, and you're like, I just need a specialist. And finally, they send you to a specialist, but guess what? They never call you. And that's a problem that I'm having right now. They don't call you, and you don't have a number for them. So you got to start the process all over again. But with that retiree healthcare, the civilian the civilian insurance is the holder of my, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of problems with insurances too, but it's way better than the
But that's
VA.
way better. Yeah,
way
yeah,
better.
Yeah. It's apples and I hate to say, is it apples and oranges? I don't know. It's still a fruit.
Apples
right?
and armadillos.
It's
totally
and hand
different.
grenades.
It's totally
but
different.
Russ, you just brought up a great point, and I want to just say something real quickly. You know, hey, everybody who's watching this, I mean, like, I'm a nobody, right? You know, I'm not an elected official. I'm just a guy, you know, whatever. But I've always felt what Russ just said. Like, and to me, if there was a politician out there worth their salt, I would vote for you. If you only ran your whole I don't care if it's, you know, at the local level, state level, national level, I would vote for you every day until Sunday. I would vote for you as many times as the Democrats would let me. If your platform was veterans are going to be actually able to get the doctors that they need, like, you know, to what you're saying, Russ, because so that whole veterans choice, if for anyone watching who is a veteran, there's this thing called veterans choice. It's not veterans choice. It just like everything in the government, they put this little caveat or word, adjective, choice, or, you know, save the children thing. You know, they always label the bill in such a way that the average idiot will think this is a good thing. There is no choice. I have tried, matter of fact, so for the record, one of the aspects of veterans choice is if you don't get health care, if you don't get a response or some type of forward progress within 72 hours. Well, so I actually let this last time I tried reaching out to Veterans Choice themselves. It's been 2 months now, and I still don't have the response. So I don't know. You guys tell me, is my math wrong? Is 60 days? Is that more or less than 72 hours? Which one is it?
Well, one would be inclined to believe it's more.
Is it more? Is it more?
If anything, just
72 hours is 3 days. 60 days is 57 more than 3. And of course, unless we're doing the 2 + 2 = potato math. But so by their own standards, I right now qualify to be able to just walk away from the VA. And I apologize, I'm doing this a long-winded way, but to bring it back to what Russ said, I personally think the VA should be nothing more than a logistical hub. That's the best way I can describe it for how my bills are processed and the logistics of it. They shouldn't be involved in my healthcare. And by veteran choice, the standards of veteran choice, I already qualify for veteran choice. I already qualify. And I already qualified. Honestly, there's other, you know, reasons where you can qualify, but just on that one alone, I already qualified to be able to walk away from the VA and have a civilian doctor and the whole civilian infrastructure. And the VA just simply becomes the clearinghouse, if you want to call it that, for how my bills are being paid. But I can't do it because, per our conversation, go back an hour ago. Yeah, no one answers the fucking phone. No one answers emails. Like, they just ignore you. Like, because and boys and girls, if you're watching this, I know this is totally subjective and it's anecdotal, but it leaves me personally with the feeling of you just hope I die somewhere in the next year or two, and then none of this will matter because you won't have to process the paperwork, you won't have to pay for the medical procedures, or no. If we just ignore this guy long enough because he can't sue us, there's really no recourse. He'll just be dead in a couple of years, and then we can just move on. And you know what? But there'll be a nice cemetery for him. You know, Russ is correct about that. The VA does have nice cemeteries, but like, I would rather actually be able to extend this for a few more years before I reside there. I don't know, Russ. What about you? You know, what are your thoughts?
It's really great that they have this awesome place for you to come and rest, you know, once everything's done. But I'm in no hurry to get there. You know, I want other stuff to do.
It's not like you're sprinting to the finish line.
Exactly, Jeremy. Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind if that's another 20 years. I mean, like, honestly, I could get 20.
Like, I'm going to beat you there, Mark.
I'll
see you on the other side.
Is it a race?
It's a race. And you know, we've got gallows humor about it, but I mean, man, it's legit though. Like, they really, it really does feel, from not just like from a you know, hard on my sleeve, frustrated standpoint, but it really does feel like like they just want you to stop being a problem, you know? And like I stopped going to the VA for well over a year
Yeah.
because I just was getting crushed by real life. And
Yeah.
I never had any you know, primary care manager. I never had anybody reach out and be like, "Hey, are you alive?" Like, we haven't seen
Right.
anything. You know, my doctor's office through TRICARE, they write me a Christmas card every year. It's
Yeah.
great. Like I never get anything like that from the VA unless it was from
Right.
like a volunteer at the help desk or something
Right.
like that. Those are
Hey,
nice folks.
again, unscripted. I'm glad you just brought that up. I have to throw this out there. So when my back went out 2 years ago, and it was the most pain I've ever experienced in my life. And like, and for the men and women, right? For anyone watching this, if you know have somebody in your life who talks about their knees or their back, you're probably like, oh, suck it up, buttercup, whatever. Because I was that person, you know, all my military and agency, you know, like, you know, friends, you know, comrades that I was working with who was complaining about that stuff. You know, I was 30, what? Well, shit. I don't know. Honestly, I think I was the strongest I've ever was in my life
Yeah.
in between 38 and 42 years of age. Like, seriously, 10-mile run. Seriously, I could hold that an 8-minute mile for 10. I could hold a 8-minute mile for 10 miles, and without even thinking about it. One of my friends, Rust, an ode to you, from the Marines. I met him in Iraq on one of my tours, and we're friends still to this day. And I just remember I was meeting him for another Marine who I know, I don't know, you know, friend, acquaintance, what do you want to call it? But where I was meeting him for that guy's wedding, and I was in the agency when I met these guys, and so we're here for this one gentleman's wedding, and we're like, hey, let's go for a run in the morning. The next thing you know, we ran 5 miles at sub 6-minute miles. And where we're done, I was like, what the fuck was wrong with you? And he looked at me. He's like, what the fuck was wrong with you? I thought we were running easy 8s. Yeah. You know, that's
Yeah.
what we and it's like, next thing you know, we're like trying to do like, you know, set the world record or some shit. But
Yeah.
where I'm going with that, it's like, so, well, shit, I don't know where I'm really going with that. I just kind of sidebarred myself
Yeah.
with some memories. Maybe I'm memory holding things, and maybe that's part of the problem. But I guess I'll just kind of bring it back to, you know, those days are over, and
Mhm.
and that's okay, right? But this isn't the point I wanted to make. I'm serious. I really did just sidebar myself. I'm like, I'm actually thinking of my buddy right now, and I'm actually thinking about that moment in life, and you know, and that's kind of cool. And but you know, those things aren't going to be a part of who I am anymore. And maybe I'm also trying to bring it back into the podcast. The ultimate point is, if you think state sponsored healthcare or government run healthcare is the solution, you know, learn maybe from this
Yep.
conversation. You know, we've kind of bounced around a little bit.
Yep.
We've talked about a bunch of different things, but at the end of the day, we all get old. We are all going to die. There's just no
We're
doubt
all
about that.
terminal.
Yeah, exactly. But if you are the person who, you know, and even to Jeremy's point or the point we made earlier, it doesn't matter that you weren't in the military. If
Yeah.
you work in this type of occupation where you live the same type of lifestyle, and you're subjected to the same type of physical, you know, in physical and environmental, you know,
Yep.
conditions, you know, and subjected to that, because that's pain, right? That just wears your body down. Well, then there's a contract. And unfortunately, maybe that's what I'm kind of getting at, Russ. And I'm going to bring it back to you. It's like, on the civilian side, I think that contract is honored more because it's the civilian side. I think you and I's and our brothers and sisters, we are the ones who kind of just like, yeah, you guys never complained, so we'll just keep taking advantage of you, and we'll just kick you
Yeah.
to the curb. And more importantly, you can't sue us. So nah, boo boo. I don't care about the health like you do. I don't know. That was a bad joke. Hey,
Yeah. No,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna bring up. I don't know if y'all have seen Born on the 4th of July, but I mean, like that. That's like a really uh, it's a pretty extreme representation of what it's like, but also a fair representation of what it's like, and
Mhm.
historically accurate too. oh gosh, now I can't remember his name. Tom Cruise's character from Born on the 4th of July. What he went through at the hands of the VA was awful. It was awful. If you want to be disgusted at how someone is treated and then agree with how they are vindicated at turning extremist afterwards. I mean, he wasn't like a terrorist or anything. He became really anti-war. But given his treatment depicted in that movie, I don't blame him. I mean, he was really screwed. That contract was thrown right out the window, and he felt betrayed, like Mark said, and that's just what you have to look forward to when you socialize something. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that like the desirous part of my brain wishes were socialized, right? Because I want to get paid sweet money for doing whatever, working at McDonald's or something, like I want awesome money for that too. Like, how come I can't have that? Just because I didn't go to college, means I shouldn't get paid. I want all that money. I want all that health care. But what you're not thinking about is how it is affected, or not affected, affected. Anyway, how it is put into implementation. It doesn't work out like that. It never works out like that. Social education. Yeah, it would be great if everyone had a chance to go to college, but then you're going to deal with subpar professors because they're not going to get paid. You're going to get a subpar education. So what's the point? And there's a lot of things that's broken with higher education too. Right. Don't even get me started. But socializing it is not the answer. Yes, I want everybody to have an education, but that doesn't mean that they should just automatically have it handed to them. You know what I'm saying? Just for breathing. There needs to be a system that we apply ourselves to these things. And if I have to do my job to get my paycheck, that's the system. If I have to work hard to go to college and pay some money to get that good education, that's the system. If it's just handed to me, then it's not going to benefit.
Right. So okay, Jeremy, don't say anything yet. Russ, that I'm here to tell you, I just got to do this to you, like high five. Like for the record, boys and girls, I've never met Russ in person. I've never had a beer with Russ. And I don't. Jeremy, have you met Russ in person?
Nope, not at all.
Not yet.
All right.
It'd be pretty dope too, though.
And I've not met you if you're watching this video. But what Russ just said, we're on episode 4. I don't know a better way of trying to describe what it is that Jeremy and I are trying to do with this podcast than what Russ just said. Like that's what resonates to me. There's so many issues. There's so many okay, it doesn't matter if you haven't done that.
Nope.
So hit pause, rewind it, listen to it again, let that sink in, right? And take that to heart and try to use that as a tool to at least guide you in a different direction or a different path as a human being, or maybe see things from a different optic, or be more open-minded about something, because that is, as a human being, that's why I absolutely love having Russ on board, and I can't wait to the day where I can have a beer with a guy in person. But on that note, without putting too much sunshine up Russ's butt here, right? So, but let's just bring this in. So we're at 17. It's 17:20. Jeremy, there, I just did it again. I don't even know what the time.
God dang it!
Is this 1 minute and 23 seconds?
I believe it is. That's correct.
So how about this? Trying to keep with our goal of an hour and a half here for tonight. I mean, I've got a million more things to say, but Jeremy, 100%. So here's the only thing that matters for this podcast. This has to be, Jeremy, you tell me, this is a part 2 and a part 3 type of podcast. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to elaborate on. And the thing of it is like, it's not even, the thing of it is it just, the more and more it's talked about, like the more and more the VA is talked about, like this is going to eventually expound and spill over to just the general conversation about state-run anything, because it's such a natural point of navigation towards just like, dude, like this ain't it, right? And to me, I think it merits having those further episodes.
Yeah.
Especially because, again, like you said, Mark, like there's so many points that you can hit on, and Russ brought up so many points. Like, it's in various sectors of places that you're just like, oh, this would be really, really conducive to being socialized. But there again, like it's one of those ideas that's always really appealing on paper because you draw with markers or pastel colors or crayons for some people.
Crayons. If you're like Russ from the Marine Corps, he would probably eat them though, Jeremy. So like,
but
there wouldn't be a lot of drawing. He would eat them for dinner.
They taste delicious.
But the point is, it's like
it's not Jeremy. Did you just hear him as we were laughing?
No,
all I heard was like delicious.
Yeah, they're good. Purple's my favorite. I love the grape flavor.
He's in it for the grape flavor.
Yeah.
Grape ape.
Hey, how about this, boys? How about this? We're going to be a little bit over an hour and a half, but how about this? Jeremy, you tell me, we're the podcast. You guys trying to do this? How about we give Russ final comments, and then it comes to you, Jeremy, for final comments and or a final question, and and if that comes back to Russ, and then you take us out. Let's try to wrap this up in the next 5 to 10 minutes because look, boys and girls, Russ is a real human being. He's a real man. He's got real things going on, and he's taken the time out of his no shit real life to be here with us tonight. And honestly, oddly, he must be drunk or something. Hey, Russ, though, I do mean this seriously. When we were talking the other day on the phone, I'll talk to you offline, but dude, again, I can't fly you out here, but I'm definitely going to give you a free piece of gear. So we'll have that conversation. I mean, that's the least I can do well, it's either that or I send you like a 6-pack of beer or something like that. I don't know, but we're going to hook you up here, sir. And I really want to see you back here again, to Jeremy's point. I mean, you're just such a good person. And, see, I'm already kind of wrapping this. No, so stop, time out. I'll shut up. Russ, you get your final, 5 to 10 minutes of comments. Jeremy, come back to you. Then why don't you either respond, take it in one last direction? But boys, let's seriously try to wrap this up in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So on that note, Russ, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I really just made my magnum opus statement there. I mean, any social program, it's like Jeremy said, it sounds great on paper. We all want equality just given to us, that's awesome. We all want all the things given to us, provided for us, but it just doesn't work out like that, historically, and even in the forms that we have it now. And that's not to say that people who can't earn those things should be deprived of those things, but that is a separate issue from just blanket having it handed to everybody. That is a totally different podcast. If you are in such a way that you can't actually earn those things for yourself, that's a totally different thing. So don't anybody make the mistake that we're saying that. But that's what I believe we're trying to get to here is the way the VA does things. It's broken. It's really broken, and there's no pressure on them to do anything about it. They don't have any pressure put on them to find good doctors. And when the doctors that they have do something it's so egregiously horrible, or even just slack on their job a little too much, there's no even slaps on the hand, none that I've ever seen. So if someone knows of one, please, if there's some system of commenting or something, let me know. But it really, what it comes down to is just, it sounds great. It is not. And don't let yourself be lied to by others or by yourself that it would be a good thing and it would help somebody. It's not going to.
Right.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right.
That seriously, dude, that guy, that almost made me cry. I mean, I'm not even joking. I mean, dude, so well done.
Yeah.
Jeremy, hey, I'm done talking. Jeremy, why don't you, I'm just, again, like last time, unless you've got a question for all, you take us out, Jeremy, whether it's a last comment or a last question for Russ. Don't ask me a question. I think I'm just going to get pissed off or cry. So you're in charge, Jeremy, and I'll just take your lead. And then when you're ready to tell me, I'll just end the recording. All right.
Yeah. So I basically have like 2 or 3 things here. So to the points that Mark and Russ have said, like in terms of like, and I think Russ elaborated on this really well. It's that there is a culture both in military and I would say it also exists in labor. And I think generationally to some degree as well, to where there is this idea, especially as men, right? As men, and it's not in any way taking anything away from women, but as men, there's this social outlook to where it's like, you have to be resilient, you have to be tough, you have to do this. Like pain is just it's just a facade. Like there's, so like
it's just part of the process,
right? It's growing pains, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, like you're gonna have pain, you're gonna have heartbreak, you're gonna have emotional issues, you're gonna have like this and that. But like as a man, you have to take that shit, put it in a box, lock that shit, and not do anything with it. And whether it's like actual physical injuries or mental or emotional injuries, whatever the case is, like what it creates is a nasty, destructive habit to where you're not honest with yourself. And if you're not honest with yourself, like I've had several work-related injuries, right? But like Russ said, there's this culture also that like, oh, like you reported this as a work-related injury. Like, like, why would you do that? You're kind of, you're kind of a weakling or something like that. It's like, dude, I've had my fucking ankles crushed. I've had a lot of shit happen to me. And it's like, did I report it? No, because again, at the same time, like I should have, let's be honest, like I should have said something about it and I should have gotten it checked out. But no, like, what did I do? I did what I was trained as a young boy to do. Like I literally tightened my boots and made sure, like, dude, I was limping the entire time that day. And that's just one of several, but it's a pervasive attitude, right? And so that stems like, you don't do this. And I do think that that's a crutch that's perpetuated. And it's like, dude, first off, we have to be honest with ourselves and our conditions. The other point that I want to, or the other area that I want to kind of bring up is at this juncture in our discussion, and on kind of a closing note, is it reasonable to presume, or is it reasonable to think that if there was a choice for veterans to go more private sector with reasonable movement room to get their medical needs versus the state-run medical system, is it reasonable to assume that most people would flock to that privatized healthcare?
We're gonna end. Great freaking point. This wasn't a giveaway episode, but that's the question. So if you're here in this video at this point of the video, you must. I hate trying to place a demand on anybody, but you must respond to Jeremy's question. What should it be? Because I already know what my opinion is. I've already said it, and I think I don't want to speak for us. I see him smiling and. He's like,
I almost yelled it before you did.
Like, I agree with you guys, or if he was like, man, I wish I had a beard like those dudes, like I don't know what he was trying to do right there. But Russ has already stated the same thing. No, if you should be outside of the veteran controlled, the government controlled medical. So respond to Jeremy's question. What do you think it should be? Hey, I don't care if it's 2 days in the military or 20 years in the military,
or Gen Pop. For even that matter, or general population, like just take it, use the military as a litmus test, and then be like, is this conducive to the general population?
Leave a comment below. That's a great one right there. All right, continue, Jeremy. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was genius. That was perfect.
No, 100%. Like if people want a litmus test, and I'm going to leave it at this: people want a litmus test. Really take everything that's said in this conversation and use that as a litmus test, and be like, do you want state-run healthcare where you're dictated how you're going to do things, what you're going to do, so on and so forth? Or do you want to have the opportunity or the ability of choice to where you can make the best informed decision that you possibly can?
Well, I think we may have just lost Russ.
Yep.
And for the record, Russ is working off his phone here tonight, whatever, but he might come back in, but we're wrapping this up right now. So, and matter of fact, and maybe Russ was just like, you guys, especially me, and then going back into, what I'm talking about, like, Mark, you take longer to say goodbye than Italians do or whatever. So maybe Russ was just helping us. He's like, Mark's going to draw this out for 10 more minutes. So
these Minnesotans are off the chain with their goodbyes. No.
All right. Well, why don't we just take it out right there? I mean, I think honestly, Jeremy, like,
100%.
My only comment here is that this needs to be this. You're the master of podcasts, right? You're the master of topics.
Yep.
This is another topic that has to be revisited. This merits at least 2 other podcasts.
And we're gonna have a lot of episodes this way, but it's a good jumping off point to where we have room to move now. So
okay, I'm gonna bring you full screen and full screen. Well, that was subconscious. I'm gonna bring you full screen, and then you take us out of here, right? You take us out here. Well, before you do it, I'm just gonna. Well, I'll just leave right here. You take us out, and then so we can both wave to everybody. You take us out, sir.
All right.
I'm sorry. I should have asked you. All right, is it time for the outro or anything?
It's time. We're ready. We've hit our point, and I just my biggest thing is I just want to say, as always, we really, really appreciate everybody that stops in to see the video, to take the time out of your day to listen to different perspectives. I mean, when it comes down to me and Mark, like he said, we're kind of dolty and dingusy sometimes, but that's part of the charm, right? And
I thought it was the beards, Jeremy. I thought the beards were the charm.
Well, I mean, let's not inflate our egos.
Aren't the beards part of the charm? I thought.
Let's not inflate our egos now. But no, we really
beards are better than others. But anyway,
well, I mean, it does happen. No, we really do appreciate it, everybody. Yes. And on that note, just there's a lot more to come. And I know I say that all the time, but there really, really is a lot more to come. A lot of these subjects will be rehashed, a lot of these subjects, but it'll be rehashed with a lot of points. So
and we'll get better at the format and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Right. This is by no means the final that we're going to hear of this particular conversation, but it's a good jumping off point. So with that being said, I really appreciate everybody. I know Mark really appreciates everybody. Stay safe, do what you got to do for yourself, be honest with yourself, and, take care of your families, take care of your communities. And it's all I got. So
my final comment is, because I actually really do want to make this part of our outro, is like, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you are part of the resistance.
Yes.
Like
100%.
I really do want to say that. So Jeremy just took us out. So
don't stay silent.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Have a great night. I'll hit end recording. Jeremy, any last things? Otherwise, I'm going to hit end recording.
That's all I got, man. Let's wrap it up.
All right. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless America. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Woo! Woo! Nice. Now I'll hit end recording. I liked your little, what was that kind of? Woo! Woo!